this out.
On today's show, Week 2 NFL with our expert, Zack. Stay with us.
And now, from Louisville, Kentucky, the horse capital of the world and sports junkies' finest, giving you wagering advice and sports analysis. It's On the Switch with your host, Geno G.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Zack back in the house. Zack, say what's up, man.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Week 2 NFL, talking things DraftKings. We'll talk a little bit about the games in general, the lines, the over-unders, those kind of things. But first, Zack, let's talk a little bit about quarterback this week.
Quarterback, sure.
So we were actually talking before coming on the show. I think quarterback this week could be important when playing GPPs because there's not a whole lot of options that I guess, in my opinion, that I like. Where are you going with quarterback this week?
Well, other than your top picks at quarterback this week, you got Roethlisberger playing Kansas City. Last 2 seasons, he's done really well. Drew Brees playing against Cleveland at home. I think he's going to shred him, but price 7,200, 6,900. Phillip Rivers at Buffalo, 6,700. You know, Buffalo's terrible. I think the Chargers going to go in there and just rip them apart.
Not to cut you off, but Buffalo or Arizona, who wins?
Arizona.
Not by much.
No.
It's
Yeah.
like a field goal game, you know?
Maybe. I just like Arizona's got more people, you know, down there. You got
definitely
Larry
more
Fitz
weapons.
and David Johnson.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's enough to win you a game.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, we were talking about, to stay on quarterbacks, we talked about a guy, Alex Smith, Washington Redskins. Give me your thoughts on Alex Smith this week.
Well, they're playing at home against Indianapolis, and last week Indianapolis had a good showing against Cincinnati, but again, their defense just doesn't look up to speed. You know, we talked about that last week where we're still waiting for Indianapolis to do something to their defense. I think Alex Smith is going to go in there and exploit them, if you would say.
So, if you like Alex Smith, does that mean you like certain players on Washington as well, like skill players as far as running back or wide receiver? Maybe if you wanted to play a combo together, do you think there could be a combo with Alex Smith and somebody on Washington, whether it's, I wish, and this is just a personal thing because he's on my team, I wish Josh Doctson would get the ball. But
well, yeah, I mean, we've been waiting for Josh Doctson to kind of blossom anyhow. You know, he had that year where he was hurt, and
right.
Everyone was waiting, and last year he just didn't really do it. You know, we're kind of just waiting for him to come into his own. But so if there's players I want to take from Washington, I'm leaning towards Chris Thompson this week.
Running back.
Yeah, running back, pass catcher. He tore it up last week, 27 points. I definitely see him making that same impact, and he's only 5,900 this week.
Well, in Alex Smith, to go along with your point, Alex Smith is definitely a check down guy. You know, he's always been that. He's not one like Drew Brees or Matt Ryan, guys going deep down the field, whatever. He's more of that intermediate, short passing game kind of guy, and that kind of fits Chris Thompson.
Yeah, dink and dunk style quarterback.
Exactly.
He likes throwing to the tight end. So maybe pro Jordan Reed this week.
I wouldn't mind Jordan Reed going off for like 30 for my fantasy team because.
Oh yeah, I mean I haven't checked Jordan Reed's value. I don't know it offhand.
He was solid last week.
Oh yeah,
he soaked up some targets.
Found the end zone.
Right.
So
which was the big key I think for him.
Right.
Now, how about this? And I'll throw out another.
That's 5,000 on Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed 5,000. That's not bad. It's more on the expensive side.
Yeah, for a tight end, definitely.
Yeah.
But maybe tight end flex option there. Jordan Reed, I don't know.
Ooh, flex with a tight end, Jordan Reed. That sounds like death.
Maybe.
But I mean,
maybe.
But
there's a play there against Indianapolis.
Definitely.
That's the reason why I would do that. I usually wouldn't say something like that.
Right.
You know, I'm playing the tight end in my flex this week. No.
Ouch.
But against Indianapolis, I don't know. That sounds like a reasonable play to me.
Like you said, I think maybe you take a little bit for what it is, at face value. But Cincinnati scored against Baltimore's D at will as well. They scored against Indy at will. I agree with your assessment in Indy's defense just being subpar, and I think Alex Smith definitely could have a big game. Last week they only scored 24 points total last week, right?
Right, and with Alex Smith, you're not looking for the yardage like you were saying. He's dink dunk style quarterback. You're really he's gonna find the end zone because he's a very efficient red zone quarterback.
Yeah.
So
I don't know it like offhand, and I'm sure you don't know it verbatim like offhand, but he does run a little bit too in Kansas City. So there's a chance, a possibility that you could get a rushing touchdown in this game as well, which I think even adds more value to a guy like that. And speaking of value and at quarterback, a guy that can also run he wasn't great last week, but I think Deshaun Watson, more expensive. And
playing against the Titans this week.
Yes. Although in Tennessee, I think Deshaun Watson shows out more in this game than what he showed against New England in week 1. He is 6,300, so he's a little more expensive than guys like Mahomes and Alex Smith. But Deshaun Watson, I think, can have one of those 4 or 5 touchdown games like he showed last season in this game. I mean, hell, Miami scored 27 points?
Yes, I believe. I don't know the score offhand. That's actually a game I didn't really catch last week, to be quite honest with you.
Anybody care. Right?
Right.
I mean, Tennessee Titans versus the Miami Dolphins.
I know Delaney Walker got hurt. I was big on him last week. I was sad to see him go. Now, sorry if you listened to me, by the way. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize to anyone who listened to me about the Lions' defense last week. I am terribly sorry.
They only gave up 40-plus points. No big deal.
Yeah, they just went off for 48.
Now, I will say
they did get a pick six.
They did get a pick six.
First play of the game. I thought I was
blowout.
Man. Yeah, I was thinking
blowout.
I thought it was coming.
No, sure didn't.
He calmed right down.
I mean, he had
16 of 21.
Right. 2 touchdowns. 1 pick. Which is fair, but
that's efficient. That you can't say, he doesn't have the yardage. Sure.
Yeah.
But he got you 2 touchdowns.
It's true.
Only missing 5 completions. 16 out of 21. That's efficient.
Yeah, you can relax though when your special team scores a touchdown.
Sure.
And your defense scores
a touchdown.
Sure. You can relax a little bit, but yeah, he did look like a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Right. Right.
Not almost like how Bridgewater was when he first got a start. Dumped down short passes, didn't really
he was
do anything
playing it
special.
Safe.
Now,
cross the body throw across the side of the field.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that was an ugly play.
I want to stay with your hot streak from last week, right? You were huge on James Conner last week. They even said Bell-like load. And man, did he get Bell-like load, and he just went berserk.
I mean, it was a total slopper up there in Cleveland.
Oh, yeah.
Rain was coming down. You knew that if Pittsburgh was going to have success, it was going to be from the running game. And I'll tell you, we tied. I mean, it was an ugly game. 6 turnovers.
Come on, man.
I know. But historically, Ben is terrible on the road against a lesser team, especially in Cleveland. It's just, I wasn't high on Roethlisberger last week. I was high on Brown. I knew he was going to find the end zone, and I was high on James Conner. I dart through at a goose egg in James Washington, but I had theory that he had Martavis Bryant-like playability.
You even said it at the very end of the episode that you can't forget Juju Smith-Schuster, who did
5
great.
receptions, 119 yards.
Right, so
that's getting it done. And a 40-plus yard completion.
Right, which gets you an extra point. So I want to stay in that trend. Emmanuel Sanders last week went berserk. Case Keenum, you gave that out.
Yes, excellent. It was a matchup that I saw from the start that had a lot of potential. And when it comes to picking these players, you're kind of in your head, Seattle, they lost all these guys, and you just make that decision and you just go with it, and it panned out. Case Keenum did wonderful week 1. I mean, outside the 3 interceptions, but that's negative 3 points. He definitely got it done.
Well, yeah, in fantasy, whether in leagues or DraftKings or any other fantasy app that you might play on, an interception by a quarterback is not that big of a deal as long as they are throwing touchdowns, because those 3 points in that specific situation is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the league, if you're playing a 4-point league or
Right.
a 6-point passing touchdown league, if you're playing in a 4-point league, yeah, it makes a little bit of difference because it takes that touchdown total from 12 to 9.
Yes.
But in a 6-point league, yeah, no, that doesn't, 15 out of 18,
Right. Now, let's kind of stay in this hot streak, okay? We don't want to steer away from the hot streak. How about running back? Anybody you like? Anybody you're king on? I know, like you said, you were super high on James Conner. He's quite a bit higher this week.
Yeah,
Are you still gonna
$2,200 increase in James Conner this week. He's at $6,700. I still like his play at a running back 1. If you want to go
Homer? No,
I see
I
what
agree.
I see what we did to Kansas City the last 2 years, and I know our offensive line. So that's what I was going on in week 1 against Cleveland. I think we can go into Kansas City and do the same thing again.
Well, everything that's come out of Pittsburgh has said this guy, James Conner, is going to get Bell-like load, period. End of story. And they're not steering away from that.
No.
And so I think a guy who's going to touch the ball 25 times plus in a game, James Conner has serious ability. I like the fact that people wanted to compare, well, Le'Veon Bell is that big play guy. I think James Conner, just because he hasn't had reps, is not that guy yet, but man, he is on the brink of something.
I'm not sure how
enormous.
familiar you are with James Conner. James Conner in college, a lot of people refer to him. If he didn't, unfortunately had cancer, he
Pittsburgh.
beat Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
University of Pitt. If he didn't experience that he could have been a first-round guy.
Yeah.
We drafted him in the 3rd round. I think we got a steal. I think we got a great running back, and if Le'Veon leaves this year, I think we'll be fine. No, I think we'll be absolutely 100% fine.
I like James Conner, and I still, as you mentioned, 2,200 more this week. I still like James Conner, especially if they are continuously saying he's going to get Bell-like numbers. So how about some guys maybe deeper down the list? I actually like a little bit, bear with me, TJ Yeldon.
Well, it is said that Fournette's going to play this Sunday, but yes, he is playing, but I can see them doing timeshare with him and Yeldon this week, considering he's got a hamstring issue, soft tissue issues. He could be playing for the first quarter, and then all of a sudden, hey man, you got to come in. He doesn't play the rest of the game.
Right. To me, knowing or thinking that Fournette was not playing, I thought perhaps Jacksonville at home against New England front that is not of what we're all expected, year in and year out. I think Yeldon could have an opportunity to get 80 yards and a touchdown or something like that. And so I thought there was value at 5,600 with TJ Yeldon. And speaking of value, Shady Rays sunglasses. We talk about this on every single episode. If you haven't already, head over to shadyrays.com. What they do, they give 11 meals to fight hunger for every purchase. They offer a 25% discount for military, both active and retired. And on top of all of that, free lifetime craftsmanship warranty. If you lose, break, have your pair of sunglasses stolen, all you have to do is contact Shady Rays and they will replace that favorite pair back to you. Head over to shadyrays.com. Make sure you use promo code SWITCH to get an exclusive buy one, get one free sunglasses today. As far as other running backs, though, value-wise, I mean, we can go way down the list. I think perhaps against a Denver defense, maybe Marshawn Lynch. He's 5,100. I think maybe has some
Tread
value.
lightly with Marshawn Lynch this week because Denver's run defense is still pretty damn good.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys are still there. So
how about a guy that you mentioned before we got on the podcast? What about Deion Lewis?
Deion Lewis against Houston.
Jacksonville?
No, Houston this week.
Yeah, Titans. Yeah, Houston. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Deion Lewis. Sure, I think he's gonna have problems catching that ball with the linebackers out there.
Yeah.
That linebacking core is pretty stout.
Right.
He might see a few problems that day, but Mariota's supposed to play, so. That's not the play I'm gonna make, but it's a good where he's priced this week. It's a good.
So, how about a guy that rushed for 100 yards last week that is sitting here at 4,600? I know we talked about it on the first podcast, and it's a guy that we were both like, "Blah." Isaiah Crowell, 100 yards last week.
Yeah, 102 yards and 2 scores against the Lions last week. He performed above and beyond my expectation, absolutely.
Oh, there is no way I could have ever predicted something like that. I know Crowell has ability, but 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, as you mentioned.
Well, he had a decent season in Cleveland before leaving, where he kind of started turning it on as far as his career goes.
I just think against a Miami defense, I think Isaiah Crowell, obviously knowing that Darnold is not going to sit back there and toss it 40 times, right? Isaiah Crowell, he's going to get reps, he's going to get opportunities, and I don't necessarily know if he can repeat from last week because I think that's his peak. I think that's as high.
And I think if he does perform well this week, that's going to show Tennessee that they might have made a mistake with Derrick Henry.
Yes, I would also agree with that.
Because there's no reason why, as hyped as he was, that last year he had the lowest yards per carry. I think it was 3.2.
3.2, yeah.
Yeah, terrible. Absolutely terrible. And it's just week 1. I know it's just week 1. Don't freak out, but...
I'm freaking out. I'm a Saints fan. We lost to Fitzpatrick.
Oof.
I mean, look.
Who would have saw that, though?
Let me tell you, hell of a beard, though.
Yeah.
That dude can grow a hell of a beard.
Yeah, it was full form.
Now, speaking of the Saints, let's move a little bit to wide receivers. And, we were talking. The Cleveland Browns, they have a decent defense. If you actually look statistically, over even the past couple of seasons, defensively hasn't been their big issue. It's been offense, really.
Right. They haven't had anyone on offense, worth having in years.
But I'm telling you, New Orleans, after getting shellacked, on their defensive side of the ball, I just don't see them not putting up, again, something like high 30s, 40 points in this game.
I just don't think Cleveland's going to be able to keep up in that type of scoring shootout. Pittsburgh gave them so many chances last week.
Well, a lot of
and I'm going to say I still think the Saints defense is better than Pittsburgh's defense when overall. So
I was
you know what I mean.
We gave a lot of praise.
It was really confusing.
We gave a lot of praise to New Orleans defense last week.
I know.
And
believe me. I know.
48 points, huh? Both of us were like, look, New Orleans D. Now,
I think one league they had like negative points.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
If your fantasy league can go negative, the New Orleans Saints
they were negative last week.
They would have went negative.
And probably Detroit too.
Yes, probably so. What's insane though is, speaking of last week in defenses, we talked about the Baltimore Ravens. They scored like 30 in my fantasy league. We talked about Jacksonville. I think this week, defenses, how do you not take whoever the Bills play every week?
Right. I mean,
are
they're
they
playing,
ever
they're playing the
scoring a
Chargers
touchdown?
this week. And, I between Allen and Peterman, man, I think Allen's getting the start this week.
Yes.
I think that's been confirmed that
Yes.
he is the starting quarterback of the Buffalo Bills.
Good luck.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. Good luck.
The Chargers, 3,600. They are the second highest
And
as
that's
far as salary wise.
as expected, though.
Well, and again, I think Allen was turnover prone at Wyoming. I don't see that changing in the NFL. I can see a couple of turnovers. Maybe you sneak in a touchdown at pick six, something crazy. But for 3,600, I still think there is value there because I think they can gain a lot of points with turnovers, possibly scoring a touchdown. Moving over a little bit, we can touch a little bit on defense maybe at the very end. But how about wide receivers? this week, I think more than any week, there is a lot of value wide receiver wise, much more than quarterback wise this week. I thought last week quarterbacks had a very favorable matchup. I think this week it's more wide receivers that can have big games. Is there anybody maybe that you're playing in every lineup, or a guy that you think for small salary, if you want to go with like Alvin Kamara at, what is he, like 9,300?
Yeah, he's 9,500 this week. That is insane. Well, how about Alvin Kamara, by the way? I'm sold. Week 1, he came back out and just did it again. I am sold.
Okay, so tell me how, and not to go off on a tangent, but tell me how the Saints just don't try. If I'm in the front office, right, I'm like, okay, who wants Mark Ingram? Because we don't need Mark Ingram anymore.
No, I still think you need Mark Ingram.
I think Alvin Kamara last week, again, it was a high-scoring game. We were playing from behind, so it has a little bit to do with it, but the dude can do everything. Now,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was 10 rushes, 29 yards, but he had a boatload of receiving yards. Yeah. And he had 2 rushing touchdowns inside, the red zone.
Right.
So as far as your rushing yardage goes, you still need that early down back.
True.
So Drew Brees at 39 years old isn't trying to throw for 5,000 yards.
He might.
He might. Absolutely, he might. But you want to protect him with that dual-headed monster that you have down there. There would be no way I would be looking to trade Mark Ingram. Not a chance.
I was just thinking maybe from the standpoint of, you've now seen an entire season plus 1 week of Alvin Kamara, and you got to be like licking your chops.
This is the last year of Ingram's contract, though. With this suspension, they could look to cut ties with him at the end of the season.
Yes, that is.
This could be the nail in the coffin.
But I agree with you. I like that dual back. Plus, Mark Ingram is like a tree trunk. I mean, he's like 4'9" and weighs like 260, and he's just gonna maul you over.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara is the guy that you're just not going to be able to touch. But again, a little bit off the tangent, but wide receivers, I just like a lot of these matchups. I mean, you go across the board. I like Atlanta's wide receivers.
Against Carolina, I can see that. Definitely Julio on the expensive end. I actually like the more expensive receivers this week. If I'm going to go expensive anywhere, it would be the receivers because, here at the top you got Antonio Brown going against Kansas City. He's going to see the end zone.
Right.
Michael Thomas against Cleveland. He's going to see the end zone.
Yes.
Julio Jones against Carolina. He's going to see the end zone.
Yes.
Houston versus Tennessee. I think Hopkins probably going to see the end zone.
Should see the end zone.
So, and then right after that, 7,800, Keenan Allen against Buffalo. So you got all these guys ready to score touchdowns here at the top. If you're going to go heavy on receivers, say you grab Keenan Allen and like Michael Thomas, you just spent 15,000 plus.
Yes.
So I go back over here to running back where I think there's more value this week. We just mentioned the Washington running backs, 5,900, 5,500 for Adrian Peterson. I don't know if he repeats that against, but it's Indianapolis, so he could.
Definitely.
Hopefully he doesn't have to do it with 26 carries as old as he is. You know what I mean? 96 yards rushing, gets 1 on the ground, 2 receptions for 70 yards. He had 166 all-purpose yards last week. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
I was happy to see it.
I hope he can do it. I hope he can do it.
Yes.
Again, but I'm not expecting it.
Right.
I'm not expecting it. It's his, you have a worry there with his age.
I'll lean in. I'll lean you in into this a little bit. You talked about a guy for Denver at running back that you might like a little bit this week. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman is 4,000 this week. Let's see. They're playing Oakland, and we're waiting to see it from him. Absolutely. But I think this week, week 2, the value is there. And like I said, if I am loading up on those expensive receivers, I would rather take a dart throw at a starting running back that is so cheap. He is the starter in Denver, and he's, the value is ridiculous.
Well, we always talk about salaries and constructing teams. And the biggest thing that I want everybody to know out there when constructing, not even just Millie Maker lineups, but all GPPs, whether it's a quarter, $1, $2, $3, $5, the biggest thing is you have to like, or I don't want to say you have to, but most of the time you'll like a guy like Julio Jones, that's 8,400, or you like Alvin Kamara at 9,500. So you have to find value in some of these guys at 4,000. And the biggest thing is when constructing these lineups, you have to balance yourself between the two. And a guy like Royce Freeman, favorable matchup. Obviously, you can't compare Royce Freeman to Todd Gurley, but Gurley feasted, against Oakland.
That second half, he just really turned it on.
And you notice, if anybody out there watched the game, Oakland is going to miss Mac big time.
In the first half, I was like, okay, Oakland's really hanging in there with them. Second half, definitely not the same tune as you saw.
Right.
So it switched genres on you.
Royce Freeman at 4,000.
It's actually, I got to correct myself, 4,300.
4,300. Well,
still same.
Either way,
there.
4,000, 4,300. I do trust your opinion in Royce Freeman. I
need to go out before we move on. I need to go out on a limb here.
Okay.
Now, last week you saw the Giants' Saquon Barkley go off against Jacksonville. It's supposed to be this really tough defense. They go in, they play New England this week. I'm just going to talk about value really quick. 4,500, James White. Rex Burkhead still hasn't cleared concussion protocol. Don't know if he's going to be there. Now, I'm going to keep moving down the list. Sony Michel, the person who would start the early down work, 4,100. It would be his debut.
I am
rookie running back.
Yes.
Now, mind you, you haven't seen much of what he has played, though. He hasn't looked too bad.
Let me tell you,
there's a play there at 4,100. After week one, their opposing rank is they're at 25th against the run. I mean, they did play against Saquon Barkley.
Yes.
He made that line look really good. That line did pretty good.
Held up pretty good. Yep. One of the biggest things with Sony Michel, and sometimes
gotta worry about his knees. He's got a lot of knee problems.
He does.
His knee drained there in preseason. That's why he doesn't have the starting role yet.
But to me, Sony Michel has so much explosiveness, and you saw so much of that at Georgia, especially even in a national championship game against that Bama defense. He is so explosive, and if there is a single franchise in the NFL that gets, I don't want to put Sony Michel in a mediocre category, but you take a guy that unexpected of big things, and all of a sudden they are Pro Bowler. That's the New England Patriots. That's what they do. They produce that. Belichick builds an offense or a defense around certain players into their skills, to their skill set. I haven't thought about Sony Michel, but it's interesting you bring that up because I think as the things that you mentioned, Sony Michel could have some success this week.
And if he does have the success this week, and before we move on, if he has a good game this week, I immediately start fading Rex Burkhead.
Yes.
I want to see his red zone efficiency. If he's great in the red zone, he gets that goal, and he pounds a few in from the 5. I'm going to start fading Rex Burkhead immediately.
Yeah, I would agree with you. You can't have 3 guys.
And it's going to disappoint a lot of fantasy owners this year. You drafted Burkhead in the 7th, 8th round.
Well, even prior to week 1, we talked about constructing lineups, or as far as draft wise, and we talked about Burkhead being a guy in the red zone that you just, for New England, you almost kind of have to have, because he's going to soak up so many of those touches, and he's going to score touchdowns in the most random spots. But as you said, if Sony Michel, especially if he shows out or shows some success, I can lean towards Burkhead not seeing the field very often.
Right.
As far as go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask another guy that I had in mind. Has been sitting down here at 4,200. We talked actually about this guy earlier, and for the first 2 weeks, you've been very pro Los Angeles Chargers. How do you feel about Austin Eckler?
Okay. I feel so confident in him in the pass game. I'm a little bit afraid of last week, them having to play from behind, that he caught a lot of balls and gained a lot of points because of playing from behind and, a lot of dump downs, a lot of, cover twos where he's wide open, easy plays, 10, 12, 14 yards. But I have enough faith that I picked him up off the waiver wire for my fantasy team. Does that mean anything to you?
Sure.
So I like the Chargers, everybody on the Chargers offense this week.
Right. Keenan Allen. I was going to say, if you miss out on getting Melvin Gordon this week, you can take a chance on Austin Eckler. Week 1, 23.6 points. Yes, they were playing from behind, but I feel like Phillip Rivers is the kind of guy, once he gets a lead, he wants to put the foot on the throttle.
Yes.
And put up 56 on it.
Yes.
So if they're putting up that many points, it just ends up being a blowout.
Well, and I think...
Which it has a lot of potential being.
Yes. Definitely. One of the biggest things when it comes to like Eckler, just in general, I think last week, although, as I said, playing from behind, I think he soaked up some touches and whatnot, but I don't think, systematically, that he was on the field because they were behind. I don't think they did anything different.
You saw that at the end of the year last year, they added him a lot into the game plan. He was doing similar showings last year.
So I guess
last 5-6 weeks of the season.
I guess what I'm saying, and to my point is, I don't think they were doing anything out of the norm to where this is just like an outlier week because we were behind, or it was only these 3 packages, which include him in every package. I don't think that was the case. I think he'll see the field a lot. And he'll have a lot of opportunities for success this week against a defense that is just...
And even if you're worried about, if they get that big lead, you're looking at, you could be in garbage time in the third quarter of this game.
Yes.
Where they might not play Melvin Gordon as much.
Yeah.
So that's the guy that's going to be there. And so at the end of the day, yeah, Gordon's going to have a great game, no doubt. But you're going to get a lot of that garbage time, brilliance right there. At
like
least
it.
fantasy-wise, you love it.
Right. And I like the fact that you bring him up because he is a guy that I think, especially as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risky play. Definitely a risky play because you're really counting on Los Angeles just going in there and throttling Buffalo.
Yeah, and you almost bank on him getting a touchdown.
Come on, Baltimore, Week 1. I mean, that offense is not that great.
Come on. Did Flacco show you enough on Thursday
to
tell you that?
Right. I mean, Flacco is still Joe Flacco, especially recently. It's one of the most, and I don't mean to be harsh, but he's kind of a boring quarterback to watch.
He's incredibly boring.
He's just kind of just
bluff. He's just there.
Right.
Yeah. So I not to go literally through every running back in the NFL, but I want to mention one last thing. I hope Frank Gore this week gets the 4th on the all-time rushing list. He deserves it.
How many yards actually is he away?
I think all he needs is 11.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So, yeah.
He actually did well last week. 12, 13 carries, 60-some yards.
Yes.
Did well.
And to be honest with you, Kenyon Drake was almost like Eckler. Like, Eckler's not getting that many rushes, neither was Drake.
No, Drake was way better in the passing game last year.
Yes. Rushing-wise, though, Miami was looking towards Gore.
Yeah.
Which is sad for me as a Drake owner. I was hoping that Gore would be...
Yeah, you're flashing with fucking Drake, and you got Frank Gore there as the boom.
Well, and from what he showed last week, there's no reason to not put him on the field more. So, Frank Gore... I wish him the best of luck this week. I hope he gets 12 yards to get to what
he deserves it. He's played forever.
He'll pass Curtis Martin, 4th on the all-time rushing list. So best of luck to him this week. Moving on to wide receivers, and we talked a little bit about you talked about the top guys are kind of juicy plays for you, although expensive. That's why I mentioned the value at the running back position this week. Just with all these guys at the top end that
it's hard not seeing them reaching the end zone. I think you have a safe play with each one of these receivers at least finding the end zone. All solid number one options, obviously.
So I want to bring up a couple of wide receivers. How about Atlanta, Carolina, game in Atlanta? So Atlanta's offense probably click on multiple cylinders, especially as bad of a game, their first game against Philadelphia. How about Carolina perhaps having to score points? No Greg Olsen. Who are you going to throw it to?
Well, you got two guys. You got Christian McCaffrey, whose targets just went up through the roof.
Yes.
But you got another guy in Devin Funchess.
4,500.
Right. Yeah, he's a definitely great value this week. I don't know how much I like him against Atlanta, but there's going to be a lot of targets there.
Yeah.
You have to. You're playing it strictly on how many targets he's going to see.
And we saw it last year when Olsen got hurt. All of a sudden, Funchess, was looking at 11 or 12 targets. And in a game in which Carolina could be playing catch up, maybe not necessarily behind, but they'll need to score more than 16 points to win this week. Let's put it that way. I think Funchess could be a guy, maybe even in garbage time or a garbage touchdown or something like that. Funchess could be a guy at 4,500.
I think I could definitely see him being a red zone target. He's the only big guy they got. So there's a definitely play there to see him finding the end zone. I think Christian McCaffrey might actually struggle this week against Atlanta. If you ask me, just the hunch I have on him this week. So Funchess is definitely a great value there at the receiver.
How about this? And maybe I'm a little ambitious, okay? But for 5,100, what about Corey Davis? Tennessee Titans against that Houston defense that maybe looked a little bit suspect against New England. I think
who's their number one corner? Is it Jonathan Joseph still?
Jonathan Joseph, yeah.
Okay, yeah, veteran guy, definitely on the older side. Corey Davis, I think he's going to be just fine.
Well, again,
opposing, rank 9 this week as far as defense goes.
I just think a lot of times when I construct these lineups, and of course, like you're the expert, not me, but a lot of times when I construct these lineups, and I play a fair amount of teams, I look at these games in which could be blowouts, right? Where the only option the other team has is to throw the ball. And I think this could be a scenario in which Houston, who looked maybe a little bit lackluster against New England, comes in maybe more prone to have a more prolific offensive output this week against Tennessee. Maybe Tennessee plays from behind. Corey Davis just sucks up targets.
Right. I mean, there's going to be no Delaney Walker. So there's definitely, another guy who you're going to be playing for the targets. And Corey Davis is definitely the better receiver to play out of him and Funchess this week, I think, just because I think you're going to get more production out of a more accurate arm in Marcus Mariota. Cam, I just don't trust Cam's arm a lot.
Right.
And it's hard for me because when I play with Cam Newton on my team, obviously I'm looking for the rushing touchdowns. Pretty much a give me. You're at least getting one a game almost.
Yeah.
Or it seems like it.
Right. Now, if you had to make a choice, whether it's in your league or in DraftKings, are you going to take Thielen or are you going to take Diggs this week? Minnesota
against Green Bay.
At Green Bay, yeah.
Thielen was the better guy week 1. I think they stick to the game script, and he sees the majority of the targets where they're going to be looking for Diggs downfield. Green Bay's secondary is kind of suspect.
Right.
They lost, no Demarius Randall. Is Sam Shields still there? I don't think Sam Shields still there.
No, yeah, I don't think Sam Shields is there.
Morgan Burnett's gone.
Right.
Went to Pittsburgh. So,
well, and
I
can't say that Chicago has a high-powered offense, but they made it look quite easy, especially
early part of the game to score on Green Bay. Absolutely,
which makes even Latavius Murray a little bit an interesting play this week. But I just think I'm with you. I'm pro Thielen over Diggs and always have been.
I'm actually looking more towards Dalvin Cook this week. He did excellent in the passing game last week. I think he could go out there and shred Green Bay this week. As well as Thielen, I think Diggs also could have success. If I'm to pick from the two, I'm going with Thielen. I'm going with a guy who's going to be 9-10 receptions a game.
And the team that we talked about, New York Jets, I like Enunwa. I thought Quincy Enunwa, he was...
When he's healthy, he has a certain dynamic. You know, he's
Right.
always that sneaky waiver wire pick. I'm not sure what his value is this week. I haven't even looked.
So as far as
4,700,
yeah,
actually.
4,700
Against Miami, I don't know. Well, I want to see how it happens because every time Quincy Enunwa gets hurt, something happens.
So I'm actually looking at in that game, New York Jets versus Detroit. Detroit's offense, Stafford looked.
Well, that was a defensive player of the game, if you didn't know, Matt Stafford.
Right. I mean, a guy that I work with, he's from Detroit. He went up to the game to watch that game.
Yeah, actually, I also had a person that I work with
Like, bro, I
go
feel
to that
so
game.
bad.
I did too.
Like
I did too.
You paid tickets to go see that. Now, this week, going to San Francisco, San Francisco's pass defense ranked 19th after week 1. Again, it's just 1 week. We kind of had, like, not a disagreement or anything, but you were pro Marvin Jones. I was pro Golden Tate. Knowing
You were
that,
right on that one.
Well, 1 week.
Yeah,
and
right.
I
I think that's the flip-flop you see a lot in Detroit. One week, one guy will be hot. That's the inconsistency that you've seen out of Golden Tate in recent years. You know, if you have him on your fantasy team, I thought he was an every other week 20-point guy. That's how I described him.
So let me make a comparison then. Last week, San Francisco played Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thielen is who for Detroit?
Well, that would be Golden Tate.
Golden Tate.
Yeah,
right?
that's the possession guy all day.
Okay. And so then Diggs is Marvin Jones, or
Right,
vice versa.
right.
Who had the better game last week?
Well, obviously Tate.
Okay, so who had the better game for Minnesota last week?
Thielen, right.
Thielen. So I'm pro Golden Tate, 6,500. I think he's a really, really good wide receiver this week. I think he
Against
definitely,
San Francisco, sure.
I think he definitely gets in the end zone. Golden Tate randomly, his peak is always like not that high, but his bottom, like his floor, is higher than most, right? So he's always in this little like nook, you know, he's like 13 points, 17 points, you know, he's like always in this range. I think perhaps this week he can go out of that. He might even get 2 scores in this game. I don't know if I love Marvin Jones at all. I think possession-wise, Golden Tate has a big week this week, 6,500. How about some Rams wide receivers? What about the Rams? Brandon Cooks didn't. I mean, you know,
I've been kind of fading Brandon Cooks this year. I'm not really sure how efficient he's going to be in the first year of this offense. Going to have to gain that chemistry with Jared Goff. He had an average game last week.
Right, Cooper.
At least for Brandon Cooks is standard.
Well, and okay, so he drew, and this is where like you can play devil's advocate, I guess. He drew 3 pass interference calls on deep balls down the field.
Oh yeah.
So if any of those are caught, never know what happens. You know, he could have had a 25-point game or something crazy.
Could have. I just gotta wait for it to happen with him.
5,500 though. Cooper Kupp.
That's my boy.
Give it to me.
That's my boy. Honestly, I love Cooper Kupp this year. He played excellent week 1, 17 points.
I just think
against Arizona, I mean, you watched Washington torch Arizona last week. So
the biggest,
I could see Cooper Kupp doing pretty decent this week.
Well, I mean, and the biggest thing for Goff, Kupp is his bailout. Like he doesn't look for anybody else.
No,
he looks for him.
That is the possession guy in Los Angeles,
and
at least the Rams.
Sure-handed. It's a guy that I think, again...
They also use him in the run game. They'll use him on an end around very quickly, and it was working last week. I actually saw him go for a first down.
And of course, Rams, I think, again, unless if something bizarre happens with the Saints and they continue this 40-point trend or something crazy, I think the Rams will be the number 1 scoring offense again this season.
You gotta love Sean McVay's offense.
Hey, did you see the video that was posted they went back to like his days at Washington. And it was like, okay, 3rd and 7, fourth quarter, minute 37
yeah, you're talking
to go.
about his.
And he's like, oh yeah, wheel route to, and he
what they call that? Photographic memory?
Photogenic memory. Yeah. He instantly just ripped him off. And it's just like, how do you bet against a guy like this?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Now, all of the weapons that he has, of course, everybody talks about Gurley, but Cooper Kupp is that guy under the radar. Though 5,500 is fair, I think there's definitely still value there with Cooper Kupp at 5,500 this week. Lastly, we touched a little bit about tight ends. I'm not in love with anybody, really. I mean, I guess maybe the best one would be Ertz against Tampa Bay's defense.
But you're paying for him. 6,100.
You are paying for him, but I think perhaps he could be the highest scoring tight end this week.
Could be. I also like for $1,000 cheaper. I do like Jordan Reed this week. Somebody I'm high on against Indianapolis. Another guy as I'm scrolling down here.
How about 3,500? What about Ebron back this
Eric
week?
Ebron.
Yeah.
I was looking for his value actually. Same game.
So
where no Jack Doyle.
Right.
Last week Ebron with 5 receptions, 56 yards and a touchdown. So
yeah,
I think
51. Yeah, 4 receptions, 51 and a touchdown. I do think Jack Doyle did have like 6 receptions, but it was only for like 50 yards or something like that.
Right.
But
it's just which one's going to find the end zone.
Yeah, but I think Ebron's going to be the guy that Luck looks for in the end zone. T.Y. Hilton, I think.
I know last week we were really high on Jack Doyle, ended up being Eric Ebron. I did have a question there in the back of my mind when it came to them two. Didn't really know what to expect with Eric Ebron. He struggled in Detroit.
Right.
But they also said that Matt Stafford throws a ball harder than anyone has ever thrown one. I couldn't imagine trying to catch a ball from a guy with that kind of cannon. You know what I mean?
No thanks.
No. It's like a guy they used to talk about back in early 2000 was Rich Gannon from Oakland. They said you get blisters on your hands catching balls from him.
Ouch.
Yeah, no, that's no bueno.
Now, one thing, if there was a bizarre number as salary for a guy, typically DraftKings, how they work is if you had a good week last week, you're going to pay for it the next week. Whether they think,
you've seen that with James Conner, 4,500
right.
to 6,700.
So tell me why Jared Cook is only 3,600 this week. He had 9 receptions for 180 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but 9 receptions for 180 yards. He's 3,600 this week.
Because he's playing Denver.
Perhaps. It's
because he's playing Denver. I think if it was against any other defense this week, his value would be a little bit higher. His price would have been a lot higher, especially off the performance from last week.
Right, and I guess that was going to my next point.
It's
not going to get any better than that. I mean, the only thing missing from last week was getting in the end zone. But 9 receptions for 180, that's probably not going to be repeated at
27 points. So.
Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, one last guy that I want to mention, and it goes back to the San Francisco game, and that's Kittle.
Yeah, George Kittle.
Okay, another sure-handed guy.
Going against Detroit this week.
Right.
I think he has a good chance of finding the end zone this week.
I do too.
So I think that's an excellent play, I think.
For 3,800, I think is a guy that you definitely need to take a look at.
Especially when you're spending 7,000 on Gronkowski or 6,100 on your boy Ertz this week, even though I think Ertz could be that number one guy. Yeah. I don't know if I like that just for the price.
Right.
Depending on how I'm setting my lineup.
120 and a touchdown or something for Ertz, I think, this week. And that's not setting the bar too high. Lastly, though, defense. And we touched on this. You can pay for the Chargers, against Buffalo.
And in 3,600, it's not really that bad, per se. 3,600 is not that bad when it comes to the last pick in you're probably sitting with 3,000 to 3,700 anyways.
Right.
So might as well take the best matchup of the week, I think, defensively.
And if perhaps you, everybody out there doesn't like taking a road team as far as a defense, you can look to the team as the highest salary, 3,700, and that's the Rams against Arizona. Arizona put up 6 points last week at home.
Ouch.
I mean, I'm hard pressed to think that against that Rams defense, you're going to tell me that they're going to score 10?
They're definitely missing Carson Palmer this year.
Definitely. I think a lot of times, until guys are gone, you don't really know
how big their impact really was.
Right. You're like,
Absolutely.
oh, Carson Palmer, he's really mediocre shit quarterback.
He was good in Cincinnati.
Right. And then he's gone. Now you're like, wow.
He did have a good, pretty couple of years there in Arizona, though. They've always been in the mix when everyone was healthy. Especially with, John Brown was playing phenomenally a few years ago in Arizona.
Yeah, Fitz was doing
his thing. David Johnson just bursted onto the scene. Yeah.
A team that we talked about thinking that they won't repeat last week's performance. New Orleans is $3,200 if you want to save $400 or $500 as far as salary, $3,200. They got -4 in DraftKings last week.
Oh, man.
So let's be honest. It's only up from here. Okay?
It has to be. I mean, come on.
We can't get any worse. So
I say that, but my team tied the Browns last week, so I can't say much.
I'm blaming that on the slop fest.
Yeah. We got to blame it on something. I'll blame it on Ben's wild arm in the first half.
That is part of it, too.
Yeah, I'm going to call it how I see it, man. That second pick of the game, he was throwing
it was a rope.
It was a seam route over the middle or down the seam to Antonio Brown. He just completely missed him. Actually, it was a deep post and threw it completely inside of him.
No chance.
Antonio looked up for the ball and it was immediately looking towards the middle of the field. And the Browns guy was like, I'm here. Thanks. You know what I mean?
Right. So I think Saints defense, steps up this week. I don't know if they're great or going to be the top scoring defense, but I can promise you this. They will get at least a turnover this week. I think they'll put a lot of pressure on.
What about Houston? I'm sorry to interrupt, but
what
about Houston at Tennessee? I was just looking through and I just had 2,600. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just kind of shut off the screen at me.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here. Tennessee didn't look too good week one.
And who's playing quarterback?
Well, Mariota is going to start this week, but come on.
After that,
you got Derrick Henry, like I mentioned earlier.
Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Right.
So, and no Delaney Walker.
Right. No Delaney Walker. Derrick Henry struggled week one against Miami.
You might be onto something here at 2,600 to save 1,000 or 1,100.
And I'm not even looking as far as like interceptions go. I'm looking for JJ and Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless getting in that backfield.
Yes, sir.
Sacks and forced fumbles and scoop scores like that. I think this could be a week where Houston jumps off the paper at you.
Well, and over the past couple of years, Houston was one of the first teams taken in every draft. Houston's defense was one of the first defenses off the board. And now 2,600 this week.
No. I think that's a solid play there.
I might be in there for a little bit of Houston action this week. So is there anybody else that you can think of off the top of your head that maybe we didn't touch on?
No, like I said, I'm very pro Chargers this week. Pro Steelers this week against Kansas City. I like Washington's running backs. Their situation this week's looking really good as far as matchup goes.
Hey, I might ride even Case Keenum out another week.
Yeah, against Oakland. We didn't even mention Emmanuel Sanders. The $5,000 value he had last week, 10 receptions, 130 some yards, and he got in the end zone.
Yeah, he got in the end zone.
Yeah, definitely. 30 points, I believe.
Right. So one of those things that I'm pro Broncos as you're going through the list. I'm pro Broncos this week. I think what they showed on the offensive side of the ball last week against an Oakland defense that I think was playing more on adrenaline in that first half. You saw the real defense in the second half. I think Denver can mimic a lot of what LA did. And Case Keenum, if you remember, in college, played up-tempo, no huddle. I think if they could pull a little bit of this like the Rams did, you could see a lot of success.
Yeah, kind of let him manage the game a little bit,
right.
With the flow. Running no huddle, 4 or 5 plays at a time.
Yes.
Let's see if they can really get the game flow going.
So I'm hoping that we can just stay hot from last week. I really think overall, yes, you can't be right about everything. As I said,
yeah, I had a couple blunders, but man, I really hit on Manuel Sanders. I really hit on James Conner.
Yeah, James
both
Conner,
really
value.
Great values last week. 4,500, 5,000.
Yep.
Case Keenum was 5,400. He had
Right.
330 some yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I mean, the interceptions not gonna kill you too bad when playing DraftKings.
So I think as long as we can stay on this hot streak, we should be able to cash one of these big ones.
I hope. And I'll tell you what, I was in slot for a lot of money the other night, but Rex Burkhead killed me on the Millie Maker. I did. I played him at 4,200, and oh man, it blew my mind. But that's the type of dart throw you make,
right?
And
right,
it's a difference between 1,000,000 and 100, or 10, or a quarter.
And we talked about it when talking about dart throws. You have to take a risk on a guy that's high end, or as far as high upside, as far as point wise, especially if you believe that particular person's going to get in the end zone, like we thought Burkhead was going to get in the end zone for sure. When they don't, and then they don't touch the ball, and then they don't see the field,
it's devastating.
You're like, damn it. And then you look at your entire
James
team.
White was the guy to play last week, 15 points.
Yeah.
And, I kind of figured that James White has been the pass-catching back in New England for a while. So listening to a lot of people selling Rex Burkhead this year, and even I was believing the hype a little bit with Rex Burkhead. It's not over yet. By no means. If Sony Michel doesn't go out there and kill it.
Well, and there's the question, and again,
it is against Jacksonville. I mean, I don't think they strike out twice when it comes to stopping the run.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll start seeing if that defense is overrated or not.
Right. It's going to be a fun week, I think, overall. As you said, I think the wide receivers will feast, especially the top ones. And I think wide receiver as a whole, more so than the running backs. I know you mentioned a value at running backs. I still think Connor could be the number 1 running back, if not by the name of Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley this week.
When you're playing this, you're trying to gauge where they're going to place for the week. Last week, James Conner was running back number 2.
Yes.
At a $4,500 value.
Bingo.
That is the value of the week last week.
Yep.
So that is mainly what you're looking for. You're looking at these matchups. You say, okay, I could spend all my money on Todd Gurley, but say he's playing a really tough defense.
Right.
You're just, he's Todd Gurley. I'm going to pick him, and
right, because that guy ran for 200 and 2 touchdowns previous week.
Right. Yeah, and you just don't always ride the hype train. Do your research. Do your homework. Look into the matchups.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
It could make the difference between $1 and $1 million.
Well, and in GPPs, there's so many entries. Like you said, you can finish 1,000th, right, and get $50, and you're only 9 points away from cashing for 1,000.
Right.
And it's just like, man, really? Yeah. And again,
did anyone start Ryan Fitzpatrick last week? What is the percentage of Ryan Fitzpatrick?
0.3%.
Right, yeah.
In the Millie Maker, he was owned by 0.3%.
Oh my God.
So you're talking about out of whatever 40,000.
I hope their lineups were relevant. The rest of their lineup was relevant.
There was one guy that finished in the top 50, I want to say, and his lineup was not very hot. Man, he didn't have James Conner.
No, I bet. That is a display that I felt like I had the inside knowledge on. I don't know.
Well, again, I mean, you go back to the fact that you get Bell-like touches, you're going to get Bell-like numbers. Yeah.
Especially behind an O-line like that. That is the true key with Pittsburgh, is that offensive line ranks top 5.
Yep.
And they do. They have 4 Pro Bowlers on that line for a reason.
Yep.
They do a great job.
I really hope this week we give you all some value, and like I said, I hope we stay on this uptick train although just in week 2, I feel like we have a good gauge after week 1, the type of offenses, like what we're going to see, and maybe give you all some value this week. If you all have any questions, have any concerns, have any questions for Zack, get at us at OnTheSwitch1 on Twitter. Follow us on all iOS and Android platforms. Subscribe. Head over to iHeartRadio, subscribe to us there. From Zack and myself, Trav, everybody included here at On The Switch and On The Switch Studios, we appreciate you all and we love you all, and stay with us.